The following program is an original production of WICC PBS Chicago.
Welcome to the Chicago Bar Association's Justice and Law Weekly. I'm Patricia Brown Holmes, president of the Chicago Bar Association. Each year, thousands of people are killed or injured by drivers who took their eyes off the road for just a few seconds. What can you do to protect yourself and your loved ones? Here to provide answers are attorneys Joel Feldman and Matthew Passon. Joel Feldman is a partner with the Philadelphia law firm of Anapol Weiss. For more than 30 years, he's represented those who've been injured or killed in a variety of cases, with a special emphasis on distracted driving crashes. Mr. Feldman is a co-founder and president of the Casey Feldman Memorial Foundation, and he developed the End Distracted Driving Initiative. Welcome, Joel.
Thanks, Patricia. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Matthew Passon is a partner with the Passon Law Group, concentrating in personal injury matters. He is the current chair of the Chicago Bar Association's Young Lawyers Section. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Patricia.
So, Matt, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about the Young Lawyers Section? What is that? What's its mission?
Sure. So the Young Lawyers Section of the Chicago Bar Association has over 9,000 attorney members. These are attorneys who are within 10 years of practice, typically under the age of 40. And the mission of the Young Lawyers Section is to be a community of lawyers to further the development of the young lawyers, allow for networking, and allow for public service initiatives. And that's something that we take pride in, and we come up with new projects every year to further those goals.
And so why the End Distracted Driving Initiative?
Well, as chair of the Young Lawyers Section, I wanted to really come up with a public service project that our membership could get behind, and something that the community would benefit from and the community could get behind as well. And End Distracted Driving is something that I deal with in my professional practice, something that I see every day, and really all of us see every day. And when I came across Joel's program, I thought it would just be such a perfect fit for our membership to implement and serve a great need.
So, Joel, let's talk about the program. Folks are texting, they're talking on the phone, they're reaching for things that have fallen on the floor. This program is very important to you. Why is that?
In July of 2009, my 21-year-old daughter, Casey, was killed by a distracted driver. That's why it's important to me. That's why I developed the program. And being an attorney like Matt, I've represented people who've been involved in distracted driving crashes, and until Casey's death, I consistently drove distracted myself. I didn't think it would happen to me. I didn't think it could happen to me, and I know that many people who'll be watching this will say, oh gosh, I saw this person driving distracted, and they'll criticize them. Yet many of those same people will also drive distracted. So it became very important to me. I wanted to remember my daughter and remember her in a way that made a difference in the world.
Well, before we talk about the details of your program, I know you have presentations that you do with respect to your programs. One of them is about an hour in length. Can you tell us a little bit about why you have presentations and what the point is? Who's your audience?
Well, basically everyone who drives is our audience, whether it's kids or adults, and we also have presentations for younger kids because they're passengers in cars, and we can get into that as we go along. But I looked around, I started being asked to tell Casey's story, and being a lawyer and being interested in proof and evidence and those things, I wanted to see, was there something out there that would work, something that had been tested, and I found that there wasn't. So I worked with Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. We developed a science-based distracted driving presentation, and that's what we've been using for the last 3.5 years. So basically our program is to talk to teens in schools. to talk to adults, parents at schools, to go into workplaces. We have a middle school presentation as well. And we cover a lot of different things in the presentation, but it's non-confrontational. And the speakers who give the presentation, including the members of the Chicago Bar Association, the Young Lawyers section, one of the things they need to do is they need to get up and admit to the kids, I drove distracted and I'm working on changing the way I drive, because people have called it an epidemic, and I think it really is an epidemic in our country. So the presentations are, as you said, about an hour. We don't charge anything. We're doing them all across the country, but this is the first time we've associated with such a large organization of attorneys like the Chicago Bar Association, so I'm really, really excited about that.
So you're a lawyer, and this program sounds like it's nationwide. Are you practicing now? Are you solely involved with this program?
Well, I'm very fortunate. My law firm, Anapol Weiss, has told me, if you want to practice law, practice law. If you don't, go ahead and do this, because they recognize just how important it is. So I practice law about 20 or 25% of the time, and if you give me a choice, practicing law or talking to kids, I'm picking talking to kids any day of the week, as the presentation that we did this morning at a local high school shows.
Well, as a former juvenile court judge, I can tell you talking to kids and keeping them in line is that's the way to go.
You got it. Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about distracted driving. I think most people, when they hear the term, would think texting, and they probably would stop there. Matt, do you have a definition?
Well, there's a great definition in Joel's presentation that we just talked about with the kids. It's any, and I might be butchering the definition, but any activity that distracts one's attention away from the task at hand, which is driving. So
eating that hamburger?
Eating that hamburger. The presentation talks about 3 types of distractions: cognitive, manual, visual, and certainly anything that takes your eyes off the road is visual, but these other actions, like changing the radio, like thinking about something other than carefully driving, is a distraction and is a problem.
So, Joel, how do you deal with those 3 types of distractions? I think he mentioned manual, visual, and cognitive. Do they break down in your presentation, or are they just common sense?
I think they are common sense, and when I first started investigating doing a middle school presentation, I underestimated middle school kids. They know exactly what distracted driving is. They describe seeing their moms and dads doing it, and the manual, visual, and cognitive, it's what it is. It kind of makes sense. When you think about it, your hand should be on the wheel, your eyes should be on the road, and your mind should be on the driving task. So it's built into the program. There's some science in the program. There's some emotional videos that we have. There's nothing bloody or graphic. It's G-rated. It can be seen to anyone. And we empower people. We don't tell people what to do. When we give the presentation, we tell the teens, I drove distracted. I don't like it when people tell me what to do, and I'm not going to tell you what to do. You guys can figure it out for yourselves. And the teens, they react very well to that, because generally people coming in who are older, have a little gray hair or a gray beard, they think they're going to be telling them, it's you, you're the problem, that kind of thing. But
Right.
I think they're the solution. And I'm so optimistic after talking with teens, including those this morning locally here in Chicago.
So you say hands on the wheel. I think most people forget 2 hands, what was it, 10 and 2 at driver's ed, right? What do you find in terms of folks who admit that they are distracted when they're driving? Either of you. So, what do you hear people say that they were doing?
Joel could talk about. I mean, he's
All right.
talked to so many kids, but we heard it this morning. But go ahead.
I've heard 8 or 9 times now around the country that there are moms who are breastfeeding kids' little brothers and sisters as they're driving.
While they're driving?
While they're driving, putting on nail polish, putting on toenail polish.
What about mascara? I've seen that.
Mascara, the thing that you use to curl the eyelashes, whatever that metal thing is.
Right.
That thing. Eating. I used to eat yogurt in the car, and I used to have one hand holding the yogurt, the other the spoon, and I'd steer with my knees.
Oh
So
my goodness.
it's whatever people do outside of the car, a person, I am sure, has tried to do while driving.
What about you, Matt? Have you ever driven while distracted?
I sure have. I've got this computer in my hand. I call it the iPhone, and it's a constant distraction for me, wanting to answer text, to respond to emails, to answer the phone, and that's my biggest one. That's one that people are most aware of. But I've driven with my knees in the past, trying to multitask. And the great thing about the presentation that we show these kids is we show them all different types of distractions. We show a bus driver who's on a hidden camera who's filling out paperwork as he's driving,
While he's driving
a
a bus.
bus full of passengers.
Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the videos?
We have some videos. There's a mix of humorous videos, there's a mix of sad videos, and there's a mix of informative videos. Some of the videos talk about people like me who've lost their loved ones. We have a video that talks about Casey's story and Casey's roommates from Fordham University, where she was going at the time of the crash. They talk about how they used to drive distracted all the time, and now they don't. And my wife is also in that, and my wife talks about how we were told what Casey's last words were before she died, and they were, "I want my mom."
Well, I hope this is not going to be too emotional for you, but can you tell us a little bit about Casey's story?
Sure. Casey was, she was going to be a young reporter, and she loved life, and she loved asking questions, and she had a heart as big as a room for people, for animals, for friends. She was walking across the street in a crosswalk in a shore community, a resort community in New Jersey. It was daylight. She was in the crosswalk, and a 58-year-old man, not a teen, 58-year-old man was reaching for his GPS, reaching across, and he had his water there, and he never saw her. And he ran her over, and she died. And then we did hear, as I said, a kind woman was there and reached out to us and told us what Casey's last words were. So that's one video. We have a video showing a 17-year-old who was programming her GPS and who killed a man while doing it. It was just a couple of days before prom. And we have the daughter of the man who was killed. So it goes back and forth telling the story. And she was pregnant at the time, and it was her first child, and it was going to be her dad's first grandchild.
Oh, no.
And she talks about distracted driving, the 17-year-old, and she says, "It's selfish." And that's an interesting point. I never really thought about it before. It's selfish driving, and I'm sure the people who are watching this, no one wants to think that they're selfish.
Right.
I was in Kansas City last week, and a 17-year-old girl told me, anytime someone gets in the car with me, whether it's my mom or dad or a friend, and they drive distracted, and I'm in the front seat, that's disrespecting me. So listening to teens, I think, and you know from your experience as a judge, listening to teens, we can learn a whole heck of a lot about this and what we can do. And they can teach moms and dads lessons about driving safe. And you know how I start my presentations in the school, and I did this morning. And I know you've got moms and dads who are watching this now. I tell the teens, you don't have to drive like your moms and dads. 80% of the kids say their moms and dads drive distracted with them in the car.
So you talk about teens learning, but they actually learned how to drive through their parents, is that right?
All the studies show once you take that car seat and you turn it around and it's facing forward, they're learning from mom and dad. Also in Kansas City, a teacher told me her 3 or 4-year-old daughter will throw a tantrum now every time she gets in that Fisher-Price car, the red and yellow one that we all have, unless mommy gives her her cell phone. I want to be just like mommy.
Oh, so she's seen her mother driving with the cell phone, and so she wants to imitate and do the same thing.
Exactly.
And so as parents, we're not thinking about the fact that we're setting an example for even the young child in terms of what they think good driving is.
4 and 5-year-olds are watching moms and dads, and they're learning from them. And the advice that we give, I mean, you hear, do as I say, not as I do. The advice that we give to parents is be the driver you want your teen to be. We would hope that no parent would drive distracted, but, and you ask any parent, your children are the most important people in the world to you. And I know Casey and her little brother Brett are the most important people in the world to me. If they're the most important people in the world to us, how do we take chances driving with them in the car? How do we teach them to take chances? Because when they start driving, they're inexperienced. You know, as adults, we get away with it maybe, shouldn't, but we get away with it, but the teens don't, and they're dying at alarming rates because of distracted driving.
So what do you hope to accomplish with your program?
What I hope to accomplish is to have Matt, through his leadership, the other folks, the young lawyers going out in all the schools in Chicago, talking to kids and letting kids know, again, they don't have to drive like their moms and dads. They can be good role models for their little brothers and sisters, teach them how to drive. And when they're in cars and they're passengers, becoming ambassadors, saying, please don't drive distracted. Let me help you if you're driving distracted. Let me text for you. You know, let's pull over to the side of the road if you want to put your makeup on. We want the kids to learn to drive safer and to be ambassadors for safe driving. And ultimately, yes, the kids, friends don't let friends drive drunk. They've learned it.
Right.
Less teens today are in crashes because of drunk driving. They've learned it.
Right.
Friends also shouldn't let friends drive distracted. More kids are going to be hurt or killed in most parts of the country because of distracted driving than drunk driving because they've gotten it. So we want it to be unacceptable socially to drive distracted the way it's unacceptable socially to drive drunk.
That's wonderful.
And just to add, my goal for this year is really just to get our attorney volunteers into as many high schools as possible, reaching as many students as possible. And I envision us reaching hundreds, if not thousands, of students this year. In speaking to some driver's education teachers in the area, they're telling me they are in desperate need of programming targeting distracted driving.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. You were in a program this morning. What was your part of that program? What did you do exactly?
Sure. So the program that we're unveiling is exactly what happened this morning. And we were at New Trier High School, and we went into, in this case, it was a driver's education classroom, but the great thing about the program is it can be scaled to reach large assemblies or small classrooms.
That's
we
good.
went there and we presented this PowerPoint presentation that Joel has created. And today I went through the first portion and then turned it over to Joel to give the rest. But then one of our volunteers, Katie Liss, gave the next presentation. And the feedback, first of all, the students were very interactive, and Joel said that's basically what happens when he goes to schools. The kids are engaged. But the teachers, there were several teachers and administrators and people who have been involved for many years with driver's education said to me and Joel, this is the best presentation he's ever participated in, he's ever seen.
So for our lawyers who are watching who might want to be involved in this program but are maybe afraid to talk to a classroom, can you give a sense for what the lawyer's part is in a presentation? I mean, Joel is doing this across the country and is doing this on a regular basis, but the lawyer volunteers may only do it once or twice.
Right.
You know, can you give us a sense for what you're doing so that our viewers can know that it's something they might want to participate in?
The great thing about the PowerPoint presentation is that it includes notes for each slide. So it's really, it requires very little, it doesn't require any training. What it requires is taking a look at the presentation in advance, maybe spending 20 minutes or so going through the slides, and then they're able to go in and add value, because the slides have great value in of themselves. The content that's in the notes is just added value that doesn't take a lot of preparation to be able to deliver a really compelling presentation. And then the schools have the presentation. So if the driver's education teachers or teachers want to then go over some of the slides again, they have it.
And then the students are asking questions?
They are. It's interactive. We're giving out bracelets. They really love that. We're engaging them, and they're more than, at least today, they were very interactive.
Earlier, Joel mentioned that you had to make sort of a confession of sorts. What was that like?
Well, I mean, it's a confession that is real because, you know, I drove distracted. And until viewing the presentation, learning more, and realizing that it is a choice, it is a selfish choice, and it's something that I'm placing other people, other members of the public at risk, members of my own family at risk. It's something that makes this problem real, puts a face on the problem.
So, Joel, do you think Matt's learned anything?
I think Matt has learned quite a bit, and it's gratifying to. And I've spent some time with Matt, and Matt's told me how he is driving differently, and he has learned quite a bit. He did a great job this morning. Katie did a great job at her presentation, and I've had probably close to 400 lawyers across the country who've done this presentation, and we get great reviews. Great reviews.
Matt mentioned a bracelet. I know the kids really like these bracelets.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about
Sure.
those?
Hold up your bracelet, Matt. Pink was Casey's.
I've got one, too.
Yeah, hold
We
up your
have them in
bracelets.
black as well.
Yeah. Pink was Casey's favorite color, so we have a pink wristband to remember her. I meet lots of parents like me who've lost their children, and they all have a wristband in the children's favorite color. I'll show you some of my
Sure,
collection.
yeah. Well, let's see.
And these are all from, it's never a dad who gives it to me, it's always a mom. These are for the girls who've died through distracted driving. These
Wow,
are for the
that's a lot.
boys. These are for the boys. And I'll tell you,
It's a lot.
a mom said to me, whose son died in a distracted driving crash that he caused. He ran off the road, he hit a tree, and she said to me, "Do you think my son was texting at the time he died because he saw me doing it?"
Oh,
And I'm not going to tell her yes because it would be cruel, but I suspect so. So that's what I'm asking parents to do. Parents say their children are the most important people in the world to them. I say,
Right.
prove it. Give
Right.
up your distractions for your children. If you have driven distracted, tell your children you made a mistake. Ask them, even if they're as young as 5 years old, ask them to keep an eye on mommy and daddy and keep them safe. And you know what? When that 5-year-old becomes a 15 or 16-year-old, they're not going to drive distracted. That's
Right.
a gift for our children, and we need to do it.
well, it makes you think about some of the things that people do when they're driving a car that they think they can do as a multitask. Even talking to your passengers, or trying to turn your radio up and down, or trying to dial on a wireless on the wireless phones inside of a car. Do you think those are part of distracted driving?
Yeah.
The hands-free?
Yeah, well, we could talk about hands-free for hours. The short answer is there's 30 scientific studies that show, and actually it was the National Safety Council, which is located in suburban Chicago. They looked at 30 scientific studies and found that going from a handheld to hands-free Bluetooth, there's no benefit at all, no safety
Really?
benefit,
Really?
because you're still cognitively distracted. Maybe some of the people who are viewing the show will think about if they've had hands-free cell phone conversations in the car, they drive a distance, they arrive at their location, and they say, wow, how did I get here? I don't remember the route. So there's no safety benefit. Of course, Illinois just recently passed a law saying that you had to drive hands-free or Bluetooth,
Right.
and to me, that sends a false sense of security that it's okay to do so. So we explain that to the kids, although most kids now don't make that many phone calls.
Right.
It's texting and Snapchat. But we explain that to the kids, and they get it. And I can't repeat it enough that I'm so optimistic when I talk with kids. You know, those kids in suburban Chicago this morning,
Right.
they're not going to drive like their moms and dads. And one of them even said to me, I'm not going to drive like my mom and dad. I'm going to set a good example because
Good.
I need to do that for my friends and my little brothers and sisters.
That's fantastic.
And you know, we're parents.
That's fantastic.
We're parents, and we're not being good role models, and we're being hypocrites. We're being hypocrites, and the kids will tell you, my mom's a hypocrite. She tells me not to drive distracted, but she does it.
Matt, you hosted a kickoff party for the End Distracted Driving Initiative. And it was a great success, and you got a lot of folks from the Young Lawyers section. It sounds like you might need some from the not so young lawyers section to join you. Can you tell us what we missed at the party and what the next steps are?
Sure. So it was a great event. It was hosted at the Chicago Bar Association. We invited not just members of the Chicago Bar Association, but also members of the public. So we had political people there. We had people who are interested, scientific-based folks who are interested in this problem there. We had teachers and moms and dads there who are interested in the problem and solving the problem. So Joel was there to talk a little bit about the program, go through some of the presentation, and just a lot of great feedback, and we're off to a great start.
That's fantastic. You know, it sounds like this might, I mean, you're both lawyers, that like this issue might have resulted in an uptick in personal injury lawsuits. Is that true, or have you seen anything like that?
Well, yeah, like Joel, I represent people who have been seriously injured or killed in a number of different instances, including motor vehicle crashes. And what we're finding is consistent with the statistics that Joel cites, that there's an increasing number of motor vehicle crashes caused by distracted drivers. And I'll tell you that in every motor vehicle case that we get involved in, that is always something that we're investigating, because more times than not we're finding that indeed there was some form of distraction that led to this unfortunate crash and resulting injuries.
Well, that's something to think about when you're driving distracted, that it could be something that causes you to be liable in an accident from personal injury standpoints. Joel, Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to educate us about being safer drivers and how to end distracted driving. For more information about End Distracted Driving, please visit the website endd.org. I'm Patricia Brown Holmes. Thank you for watching Justice and Law Weekly.